After 16 years of pop cultural success, Toho Studios' Gojira or Godzilla series was beginning to lose momentum in the 1970s. While many see the 1970s as an inferior decade for Godzilla compared to the 1960s, the content released between 1970 and 1979 would create a whole new generation of Godzilla fans that paved the way for the popularity of Japanese pop culture in the West that is so dominant today. With the release of Yamazaki's Godzilla Minus One this week, it is the perfect time to look back and appreciate an often overlooked period in the history of the franchise. Let's go back to the fabulous 1970s and take a look at my generation's definitive Godzilla era.
Initiate sequence. Retrotron Entertainment presents
That 70s Nerd. I explore the hidden depths of 1970s pop culture, from movies and television to books, comics and magazines, music, toys, and technology. Discover forgotten classics and hidden gems you will not find anywhere else with That 70s Nerd. Godzilla in the 1970s was a roller coaster ride, full of ups and downs, yet thrilling at every turn. Generation X, the kids of the 70s, found themselves mesmerized by the giant monster's adventures. The Godzilla films of the 1970s, often criticized for their quirky visual effects and fantastical, nonsensical storylines, became cherished childhood memories for my generation. As a result, a new, fervent fan base was born, one that would carry the torch of Godzilla fandom into the ensuing decades. As we explore this decade, rich in iconic pop culture events, we pay respects to the era that, against all odds, cemented Godzilla's place in the hearts of millions and left a kaiju-sized crater in the annals of pop culture history. Godzilla vs. Hedorah, also known as Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, is a unique entry in the Godzilla franchise. It is the only Godzilla movie directed by Yoshimitsu Banno, who is given unprecedented control over his film despite a lack of previous experience as a director. Banno had previously worked as assistant director on some of Akira Kurosawa's classic films, including The Throne of Blood and The Hidden Fortress. Banno presented a strong environmental message centered around the fight between Godzilla and Hedorah, a monster spawned from pollution. Hedorah evolves from a microscopic organism into a full-blown smog monster, presaging the mutations of Shin Godzilla, feeding on the pollution and toxins of industrialized Japan. The story unfolds as Hedorah grows stronger and more destructive, wreaking havoc on the Japanese landscape and posing a severe threat to human life. Godzilla, as the defender of Earth, engages in fierce battles with Hedorah, showcasing the franchise's hallmark monster combat scenes. The film stands out for its eclectic and somewhat psychedelic style, which includes animated sequences and experimental cinematography. This presentation is a departure from traditional Godzilla film styles, adding an unusual, almost surreal quality to the narrative. Despite its mixed critical reception at the time of release, the film has gained a cult following over the years for its unique approach to the Godzilla mythology and its bold commentary on ecological issues. Godzilla vs. Gigan is considered a classic example of the campier, late Showa-era Godzilla movies, featuring the typical blend of comic book sci-fi elements, kitschy design, confusing storyline, odd musical choices, and epic monster brawls that appeal to fans of this era. The plot, such as it is, revolves around a struggling cartoonist who uncovers a sinister plot at a new theme park called World Children's Land. The park's centerpiece, a Godzilla-shaped tower, is actually a base for alien cockroaches who plan to conquer Earth. The aliens' primary weapons are two space monsters, Gigan and King Ghidorah, brought to Earth to carry out their destructive agenda. The story unfolds as the protagonist and his friends uncover the alien plot, leading to large-scale destruction as Gigan and King Ghidorah attack Tokyo. Godzilla, along with his ally Anguirus, responds to the threat, setting the stage for the kind of elaborate monster smackdowns that are so appealing to Showa-era fans. The film is also notable for introducing Gigan, a cybernetic monster equipped with a buzzsaw in its belly and hooks for hands, making it one of the most bizarre and memorable adversaries in the Godzilla universe. Godzilla vs. Gigan is characterized by its campy tone and use of stock footage from previous Godzilla films, by the 1970s a common practice in the series due to budget constraints. The movie also features a distinctive twist. For the first time in the series, Godzilla and Anguirus are portrayed as having a form of communication, with speech bubbles appearing in the Japanese version and dubbed voices in the international release. For me, a low point in the venerable franchise's history. Despite its low-budget production and mixed reviews, Godzilla vs. Gigan remains a favorite of some fans for its loony charms and memorable monster showdowns. Godzilla vs. Megalon, released in the year of my birth, 1973, is another notable entry in the Godzilla series for fans of late Showa-era monster movies who love the lighter tone, 70s aesthetics, and unintentional humor. The film's production was rushed, resulting in a heavy reliance on stock footage and a less polished feel compared to other entries in the series. Godzilla vs. Megalon is set in a contemporary world, where nuclear testing has caused significant environmental damage. The underwater civilization of Seatopia, affected by these tests, decides to unleash their god, Megalon, a giant beetle-like kaiju, to exact revenge on the surface world. The Seatopians also gain control of Gigan, a space monster, to assist Megalon in this quest for retribution. The film introduces a new character, Jet Jaguar, a humanoid robot created by a scientist. Initially designed for peaceful purposes, Jet Jaguar becomes pivotal in the fight against Megalon and Gigan. The robot has the ability to control its size, growing to kaiju proportions, and seeks the help of Godzilla to defend the Earth. This leads to a tag team battle that forms the climax of the film, with Godzilla and Jet Jaguar fighting against Megalon and Gigan. Even for those of us who do not enjoy this film, you have to love this battle, the longest and most outrageous in the entire series, including the American entries. Despite its lower production values and a mixed critical reception, Godzilla vs. Megalon has also earned a considerable cult following over the years, and is remembered for introducing the very popular character Jet Jaguar. By 1974, Toho knew it was time to put Godzilla on the shelf for a while, but did not want their mascot character to be remembered in the light of 3 consecutive failures. Efforts were stepped up to give Godzilla a more fitting bow out. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, directed by Godzilla veteran Jun Fukuda, was released in 1974 and is an important entry in the Godzilla franchise, introducing one of Godzilla's most iconic and undyingly popular adversaries, Mechagodzilla, a giant robotic doppelganger of Godzilla. The film's plot revolves around the appearance of this new foe, initially disguised as Godzilla, causing destruction. The real Godzilla eventually confronts its mechanical counterpart, leading to intense battles. The plot also weaves in elements of Okinawan mythology and features another monster, King Caesar, my personal favorite, a guardian beast of Okinawa who assists Godzilla in the fight against Mechagodzilla. Jun Fukuda brought his trademark style to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Fast-paced action, colorful characters, a lighter tone that is fun but not campy, and dynamic battle sequences. Despite facing budgetary constraints, the production team succeeded in creating an engaging and visually impressive film. The introduction of Mechagodzilla was particularly well received, and the character has since become a staple in the Godzilla universe, reappearing in various forms in later films and media, including the American series. The movie, with its blend of mythology, science fiction, and classic kaiju action, has been appreciated by fans and is considered a classic in the Godzilla series. Terror of Mechagodzilla, released in 1975, is a direct sequel to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and is notable for being the final Godzilla film directed by Ishiro Honda, who had directed the original Godzilla film and had remained a prominent figure in the franchise. Honda reintroduced a more serious tone to his sequel, once more veering away from Jun Fukuda's more mainstream style. The story picks up after the events of the previous film, with the alien invaders rebuilding Mechagodzilla to continue their quest for Earth's domination. This time, they collaborate with a disgraced scientist and his daughter, who controls Titanosaurus, a giant aquatic dinosaur. The film combines the threat of both Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus against Godzilla, leading to a climactic showdown. Director Ishiro Honda endeavored to create a film that honored the traditional elements of the Godzilla series. The inclusion of a more complex human narrative, particularly the tragic story of Professor Mifune's daughter, Katsura, added a layer of depth to the film that many fans still appreciate. However, Terror of Mechagodzilla struggled at the box office, reflecting the waning interest in kaiju films during that period. This led to a temporary hiatus in the Godzilla series, which would not see a new film until 1984's The Return of Godzilla. Despite its initial lack of commercial success, Terror of Mechagodzilla has gained recognition over time for its quality and for being Honda's final contribution to the Godzilla saga. The Shogun Warriors franchise, a remarkable blend of Japanese and American pop culture, has captivated audiences for decades through its elaborate large-scale toys and its unique relationship with the Godzilla franchise. Shogun Warriors was an early example of an American toy company importing Japanese toys for their own domestic market. Mattel licensed the toys from Puppy, who were experiencing large success in Japan with die-cast representations of characters and vehicles from television shows. One of the most iconic toys in the Shogun Warriors line for American audiences was Godzilla. Released in the US, this version of Godzilla stood almost 20 inches tall, towering over most other toys of the time, and had fun features such as a spring-loaded projectile fist and a red lever on the back of its head to extend a tongue of flames. I had this toy and spent many hours recreating the monster rallies from the movies using various stuffed animals as stand-ins for the famous Toho kaiju characters. In 1978, Hanna-Barbera, along with longtime Godzilla ambassador Henry Saperstein, brought Godzilla to American television in its own animated series. The series followed the adventures of a team of scientists on the Calico, a research vessel headed by Captain Carl Majors. The rest of the crew includes scientist Dr. Quinn Darien, her nephew Pete Darien, and her research assistant Brock Borden. Also along for the ride was Godzuki, Godzilla's nephew. Just how that works out, I do not know and do not want to know. Godzuki seems to have been loosely inspired by Mania, the son of Godzilla from the Toho film series, and is Pete's best friend, a cute sidekick and mascot for the gang. The group often called upon Godzilla by using a special signaler when in danger, such as attacks by other giant monsters. Also, Godzuki could summon Godzilla with his roar. In addition, Godzilla's trademark atomic breath was changed to fire like a dragon. He could also shoot laser beams from his eyes. I'd still love to see that in a Godzilla movie. Joe Barbera later recalled, "My job back then was to dig up new characters, new ideas, new shows, and I had wanted to do Godzilla for a while. I liked the monster thing, and the way it looked, and I thought we could do a lot with it. So I contacted Henry Saperstein, who was a very good friend, and we got talking about it. Then there was an executive at the network who wanted to get into the act and urged us to lighten the storyline up. So I came up with the character Godzuki, who was like Godzilla's son. The show had a sort of father and son relationship, which we had done before on shows like Johnny Quest. I wanted the series to be more or less a straight adaptation of the movie series, but when they start telling you in standards and practices, don't shoot any flame at anybody, don't step on any buildings or cars, then pretty soon they've taken away all the stuff Godzilla represents. That became the problem, to maintain a feeling of Godzilla and at the same time cut down everything that he did. We managed to get a fair show out of it. It was okay. While the initial cycle of Godzilla films had ended following the commercial failure of 1975's Terror of Mechagodzilla, dubbed versions remained popular attractions on American television, particularly with younger viewers, such as myself at the time. Marvel editor-in-chief Stan Lee was also a fan of the character, and arranged to license Godzilla in 1976. The deal struck was for Godzilla himself only, and none of the other Toho monsters, which had appeared in the film series. Incredible Hulk artist Herb Trimpe was assigned to draw the series. He was sent movie stills by Toho for reference, and attempted to keep the film version's personality by drawing Godzilla as a guy in a rubber suit. Stan Lee approached Doug Moench, one of my all-time favorite comic book scribes, to script the book, since Moench was looking for something a little lighter to work on. Stan Lee took Moench to see his first Godzilla movie, but Moench was not impressed by what he saw. However, he felt that Marvel's Silver Age audience had grown out of reading Marvel comics, and saw Godzilla as an opportunity to connect with a younger audience. Moench attempted to humanize Godzilla by creating an ongoing supporting cast of characters. Moench devised the character Rob Takaguchi, named after a high school friend he remembered, to befriend Godzilla. The robot Red Ronin was also created for the series at the suggestion of Archie Goodwin, who was aware of the success of the mecha genre in Japan. Goodwin also suggested putting Godzilla in the Marvel Heroes universe, a ploy often used by Marvel with licensed properties to entice readers. The series ran for 24 issues between August 1977 and July 1979. During the run, toy company Mattel acquired the license to produce merchandise based on the Godzilla character as part of their Shogun Warriors line, which also featured many of the Japanese super robots which had inspired the design of Red Ronin. Impressed by Marvel's handling of Godzilla, the company made a deal to produce a Shogun Warriors comic, also written by Moench and drawn by Trimpe. Shogun Warriors Issue 1 is the first comic book I ever remember buying with my own money. Sadly, despite Marvel holding the rights to both properties simultaneously, the two titles never crossed over. The first issue sold a staggering 200,000 copies, but after 2 years of minimal communication with Marvel, Toho Studios abruptly raised the fee for renewing the Godzilla license. Realizing that they would not be making as much money off the property, Marvel withdrew from negotiations, and Godzilla, King of the Monsters was cancelled after only 24 issues. Godzilla remains a beloved character throughout the world, with A-list directors such as Hideki Anno, Takahashi Yamazaki, and Gareth Edwards crafting modern monster masterpieces. It is safe to say that Gojira has a long future ahead of him, but for many, the 1970s remains a highlight in the long history of the franchise. Be sure to hit the bell for notifications so you never miss out on new videos and community posts.